From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now! The Dow Jones tops 10,000. Wall Street reports massive profits. Executives receive record bonuses. But on Main Street, foreclosures climb to a record high, and unemployment is expected to top 10%. We'll talk to former bank regulator William Black, author of The Best Way to Rob a Bank is to Own One. Then Slovenian philosopher and public intellectual Slavoj Žižek on the financial crisis, capitalism, and healthcare.
Where is freedom of choice actually of some value? Like, I'm sorry, but I wouldn't like to live in a society where, for example, I would have to choose electricity. Well, like, this would be a nightmare society. I prefer these things simply to be in the background. Why not do the same for healthcare?
Slavoj Žižek is the author of over 50 books. His latest is First as Tragedy, Then as Farce. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Britain's announced it's preparing to send more troops to Afghanistan and suggested the U.S. is poised to do the same. On Wednesday, British Prime Minister Gordon Brown said he would deploy an additional 500 soldiers if several conditions are met, including additional troop commitments from other NATO forces. Brown indicated the troop boost is linked to an expected U.S. troop increase, saying, quote, "I believe the decision we're announcing is consistent with what the Americans will decide." Addressing the British Parliament, Brown said the decision had been made in close consultation with the United States.
But I do want to stress that the decisions that we are announcing today have been made after the fullest possible consultation with our American allies, with the Secretary-General of NATO, and with our own military commanders, commanders on the ground, but the Chief of the Defence Staff and the Chief of the General Staff, and I've regularly met them over the last few weeks to deal with these issues.
Britain has the second largest foreign occupation force in Afghanistan with around 9,000 troops. The BBC, meanwhile, is reporting President Obama has already decided on an increase of some 45,000 troops that could be announced as early as next week. The White House has denied the report. Meanwhile, President Obama convened a Fifth War Council meeting Wednesday to discuss the occupation of Afghanistan. The administration is currently weighing a proposal from Afghan War Commander General Stanley McChrystal to add up to 60,000 additional troops. On Tuesday, Obama said a decision will be made in the coming weeks and defended U.S. war aims.
Our principal goal remains to root out al-Qaeda and its extremist allies that can launch attacks against the United States or its allies. That's our principal mission. We are also obviously interested in stability in the region.
It's unclear when the surge will happen, if it's announced before or after President Obama wins the Nobel Peace Prize. In other Afghan war news, the Pentagon has imposed a new policy barring media from photographing U.S. soldiers killed in combat. The rule change was introduced last month after the Associated Press published a photo of a mortally wounded U.S. Marine. The White House and top Senate Democrats have begun talks on merging competing health care measures into a final bill. On Wednesday, White House officials held a closed-door meeting with Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, Senate Finance Committee Chair Max Baucus, and Senate Health Committee Chair Christopher Dodd. Democrats are trying to retain the support of Republican Senator Olympia Snowe to ensure Senate passage. On Wednesday, Snowe continued to voice opposition to a public health insurance option, calling it a deal breaker. Meanwhile, single-payer advocates are planning a national day of action today. The group Mobilization for Healthcare for All says more than 700 people have signed up to risk arrest by holding sit-ins in front of insurance company offices nationwide. The House has approved a new sanctions measure against Iran. The Iran Sanctions Enabling Act would free up states and local governments to opt out of international investments in Iran. The measure passed with 414 in favor and just 6 opposed. The Wall Street Journal is reporting major U.S. financial firms are on pace to pay a record $140 billion in employee bonuses this year. The record payouts come less than a year after taxpayers bailed out many of these same financial institutions. Meanwhile, newly released disclosures show some of Treasury Secretary Timothy Geithner's closest aides have earned millions of dollars from bailed-out Wall Street firms. Last year, Geithner advisor Gene Sperling made over $887,000 from Goldman Sachs and another $158,000 in speaking fees, mostly from financial companies. Another aide, Lee Sachs, made over $3 million from the New York hedge fund Mariner Investment Group. We'll have more on Wall Street news after headlines. In Pakistan, around 40 people have been killed in a series of coordinated attacks. Earlier today, gunmen raided 3 government facilities in the city of Lahore, while a suicide bomber struck a northwestern town. Taliban militants have recently escalated attacks in advance of an expected major Pakistani military offensive in restive areas near the Afghan border. In other news from Pakistan, at least 4 people have been killed in a suspected U.S. drone attack in the North Waziristan region. Pakistani officials said the strike targeted a militant compound. In Honduras, conflicting accounts have emerged from the latest round of talks between the Coup regime and representatives of the ousted President Manuel Zelaya. On Wednesday, both a Zelaya negotiator and a top Coup official said a tentative deal had been struck on the key point of Zelaya's return to office, but a Coup regime negotiator later denied a deal had been reached and said the talks would continue today. Meanwhile, pro-Zelaya demonstrators continue to rally outside the hotel where the talks have taken place.
We hope that today we get white smoke from the 9th floor of the Clarion Hotel. We hope that these authorities who have come here, these international organisms, truly lend a hand in Honduras.
The UN Human Rights Council is expected to open discussion today on the findings of a UN inquiry that accuses Israel of a series of war crimes during its 3-week assault on the Gaza Strip. The session occurs just days after widespread Palestinian outcry forced the Palestinian Authority to reverse its backing of U.S. and Israeli demands for an indefinite delay to addressing the report at the United Nations. It also comes one day after the UN Security Council took up the report's findings. On Wednesday, the Palestinian representative to the United Nations, Riyad Mansour, said the report's reception heralded an end to Israeli impunity in attacking Palestinians.
The culture of impunity that Israel allowed Israel to get away with murder for the last 60 years is no more. We are entering a new culture of accountability, and this process is not a short process. It's a long process, but we are all determined to defend international law, international humanitarian law, and to bring the criminals to face justice.
Around 1,300 Palestinians were killed in the assault compared to 13 Israelis, a ratio of 100 to 1. In other Mideast news, Israel continues to demolish Palestinians' homes in occupied East Jerusalem. On Monday, Israeli troops destroyed the home of Amjad, an East Jerusalem father of 3 children.
Side. It's coming the soldiers, it's coming take me. She bring the dog. What do you want? I tell him. I have problem in my heart. It's not my problem, she tell me. Go outside. I tell them they want to go. 5 soldiers, you take me, you broke me out. Take my phone and my... put my dress. You know, she tell me no, we don't want. Anyway, you see, after we broke the house. Now I have 2 problems. Don't have any place to sit. I have 3 children.
Over 200 Palestinian homes have been demolished in East Jerusalem and the West Bank this year, displacing at least 520 Palestinians. Meanwhile, in Israel, 2 human rights groups have released a report documenting what they call the unlawful imprisonment of some 335 Palestinians in Israeli jails. The group B'Tselem and Hamoked say Israel is violating international law by holding the prisoners without charge or trial for years on end. The 335 figure could be substantially conservative. There are an estimated 10,000 Palestinians in Israeli jails. In Puerto Rico, tens of thousands of people are expected to take part in an island-wide strike today against massive public layoffs. The Puerto Rican governor, Luis Fortuno, is proceeding with plans to fire some 17,000 workers next month, including school teachers, social workers, and healthcare workers. The job cuts would bring total government layoffs in Puerto Rico this year to nearly 25,000. Union leaders say some 100,000 people will converge on the Plaza Las Americas in the largest of several planned rallies. In addition to cutting jobs, Governor Fortuno has drawn criticism for threatening to